Ballpark Nation presents. Welcome to Go Astros, your look at the two-time World Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Astros fans. It is playoff week. We are hosting a wild card series, and we are all wild about the Astros and the Tigers. It's Go Astros. I'm Andy Tomchesson. That's James Christopher. And with us, as always, is Brian Arbor from the not rainy Northeast.
No, it's rainy up here. Sorry.
Oh, darn. Well, I was wondering how far Helene had made it up. I'm sure there's some remnants of that hitting you.
It's a different system, but I get to spend Saturday camping with the Boy Scouts, and got rained on more than I liked.
I like how you said "got to."
Well, we should take a minute to acknowledge everything going on in Western North Carolina and the Southeast. They've been hit hard, and there is an Astros connection because Asheville is one of our AA affiliates, and that field is underwater right now.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to ask you, Andy, if you saw any about that. So you're saying it's submerged?
There's very little footage coming out. Nobody's tuning in for water because the roads have been impassable, and the only way to get there has been helicopter, and they've been using those helicopters to get supplies in and not film things, which is appropriate, I think. The Asheville field, drawing a blank on the name, was flooded. I don't think it's washed away or anything like that, but certainly some repairs are going to have to be made before next spring, like a lot of the area. So our best wishes are with those people, and hopefully recovery can happen soon and quickly, and things can get back to normal for them as well. Speaking of normal, I think it's pretty normal that the Astros are in the playoffs. It's been 8 straight years. We're kind of used to it, to the point that we don't sell out wild card series in the middle of the week anymore. But that's a whole different topic.
I tell you what, though, I'm so glad I did not buy those tickets because they're going for like $20 on SeatGeek.
Before we get to that, we can complain about the scheduling. The week that was, we were all. It felt to me, and you guys can comment on this, like it was kind of a microcosm of the whole season. We had really high expectations when we recorded Monday morning. And then by the time we had lost the game Monday evening, most of Astros Twitter had lost their minds, kind of like April, with just, the whole season's over. I don't think we're going to win another game. And then we clinched and everything was better again. And then we didn't care about what was going on because we were just waiting for the playoffs to start. That felt very similar to how this whole summer's going. How did the week feel for you, Brian?
I mean, they won the division and got into the playoffs. That is the major goal of the real challenge in baseball, the 162 game regular season. And then you get into the tournament, and you have a bunch of coin flips, and you hope they turn out your way. But the major accomplishment, the major goal, the one thing the teams really sort of strive for, is to get into the playoffs to win their division. The Astros, for the 7th straight full season, were the best team in the American League West. Cheers.
Mazel.
Yeah, where were you? Because I know you were a little bit on the panic bus at some point Monday night.
Yeah, well, I had the misfortune of having a really garbage week while I was at the games. And so as a result, I remember because traffic was just miserable getting from Austin. Like I think it took me almost 5 hours to get from school to Minute Maid. So by the time I sat down, I was just pissed off for that Monday game. And then the Monday game was something worth being pissed off at. So I think that definitely colored everything to the point that I went to the Tuesday game by myself. I was just having a crappy week, and then they won. So there you go. And then Andy, you and I got to watch most of the last home game of the season, which I was surprised, Andy. I mean, I guess pleasantly surprised, Andy, that it was still a really good crowd for it being a Wednesday afternoon after they had already clinched. There was really nothing to play for, yet they still had 32,000 people in the ballpark.
Yeah, I think the 400s weren't very full from where we were sitting, but other than that, it was a good crowd for a Wednesday afternoon with school in session and a game that meant nothing. And I will say, well, by the time that we were in our seats, we were winning. When you had to finally go home, that's when they decided to stop pitching and, whatever.
Right.
The Astros did finish the season, won the division with 88 wins. I think some of us were calling for 90 to win the division, so pretty close on that call. Won the division by 3.5 games by the virtue of the cancellation. The cancellation that honestly could have happened much earlier than it actually did with Cleveland.
This cancellation could have been an email.
It could have. And yet we got, I think, 3 different lineups floated out. There was an initial one and then a mid-delay one and then one more. And then, we're not going to do this. I guess I get it from the standpoint of tickets are sold and there's fans that are there and probably want to watch the game. But I can't imagine any fans were sitting in the stands going, I really hope I get to do 9 innings of rain. That seems like it'd be really, really fun to watch AAA lineups.
And that probably, what is that? Probably chilly already. Cleveland, Ohio rain. Yeah. It's not quite a Ronnie Millsap song, but it's close.
Yeah, I think the only thing Guardians wanted is for Jose Ramirez to hit home run to go to 40-40. So I think they should have just, had some batting practice for 5 minutes in the rain. Let him do that. Let it count.
Just ask like Fromber to throw a couple underhand to him and get out of there.
Yeah, I think we're all on board with 162 being a good number for a season, but 161 felt just fine yesterday.
Felt just fine, yeah.
So that brings us to the most improbable matchup that going into the week that we could have ended up with has happened. The Astros will be hosting the Detroit Tigers, who ended up in the 6th seed in the wild card race. So that starts tomorrow. And the Astros fans are, I think, a little bit nervous. And I don't know that I blame them, knowing at least our history, knowing Kevin Brown and what a good pitcher can do to a series quickly. Terrence Skubal, who is the presumptive Cy Young winner for the American League, will be opening that game against Framber Valdez. What are our thoughts, Jim? I'll start with you. Playing the Tigers. I mean, there's some history that I'm sure we'll be hearing about on the affiliate.
Well, we won't be hearing about it because it's all happening while we're at work. So luckily, we won't have to hear about it when it's broadcasting.
Some of us are on hiatus.
Oh yeah, I guess whatever. No, I think hiatus is my business. He's on
sabbatical.
Sabbatical. That's right. That's what
I'm taking a Sabbath break.
Those are very fancy words for not working.
Not working. Yeah.
I'm still collecting a paycheck. That's the important part.
Look, okay, so it's 2 thoughts. They are the draw that I wanted the least. I think most people, it's particularly how Kansas City really struggled down the stretch, because these teams might have been interchangeable in June if we would have found out, we got to play Kansas City, I'd rather play Detroit. So there's some of that. But I still think the Astros were a better team. And I think that, you're going to have to be able to roll out 3 really good pitchers, and the Astros can do that. And Detroit will have one probably best pitcher in baseball this year. But, I feel like if the Astros can be patient and work counts and drive up pitch counts, Detroit's bullpen isn't great. So I'm not willing to do what some fans have done that I've seen already, where just mark it up as an L and call for a spot as job. Like I definitely still think the Astros could easily win or lose this series, but I felt like they were going to have to get through Detroit one way or the other. I would have rather them gotten through Detroit in a 7-game ALCS, which is how it was lining up before yesterday. But I still feel pretty good about the Astros' chances starting tomorrow. I think Jordan will play. So,
yeah, I'm going to slightly disagree with Jim here about their bullpen, which is actually pretty good. Part of why it's sort of regarded this way is there's nobody famous in it. You haven't heard.
Well, they have like a 7-something ERA in their last 30 games. Those are some numbers I found the other day, Brian, last night.
I mean, okay, overall pitching, they are 4th in majors in runs allowed. They are second in on base allowed, second in slugging, second in on base percentage. They prevent runs. They also have a very good defense. Their offense is terrible. Anyway, part of what's happened with the Tigers pitching staff and the Tigers pitching has really keyed their run. They were sellers at the deadline. They sold their second best pitcher in Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers in a trade. But part of what they've done is instead of saying, hey, let's have a 5-man rotation and see how long the 5-man rotation go, they've basically been, we have Tarek Skubal and we will just piece together everything else with openers and bulk guys and bullpen games, and it's worked exceedingly well. So yeah, you haven't heard who Brent Hanafy or Will Vest is. They pitched really well. Now here's the thing. The Astros pitch pretty well too, because it's the pitching that has turned around for the Astros this season. And there is a massive difference in offense. The Tigers aren't very good on offense. They are 24th in batting average, 29th in on-base percentage. They have a .299 team on-base percentage, 22nd in slugging. The Astros 3rd in batting average, 7th in on-base percentage, 8th in slugging. So
the numbers I'm looking at show the
advantages. What's that, Jim?
I would say the numbers I found that I'm looking at right now show that the Tiger bullpen has an ERA now of the season of 7.56. Now that could be front loaded because not being very good at the beginning. I don't know. The fact is still the solution to beating them is getting to their bullpen. You're not going to beat Terry Skubal.
No, he only pitches one game and he's going to pitch 5 to 6 innings. The good news is, so Terry Skubal led the American League in ERA. You know, finished 3rd in the American League in ERA.
Bromber.
Yeah, like it's not like, it's not like there's a massive game 1 advantage on the mountain. And again, get to the back of the game, the Astros have, proven playoff veterans who have pitched better in the playoffs than they have in the regular season. They pitched pretty well in the regular season in Abreu and Presley. We've seen that many times from them. Presley's got an outstanding record the last several years in the playoffs. And then Josh Hader, who strikes out a ton of guys at the end of the bullpen. So again, the Tigers may have a small advantage on the mound. And the Tigers have an excellent defense, particularly like Parker Meadows in center field. It's one of the best defensive center fielders in baseball. But the Astros have a massive advantage with the bats. And so I don't expect the Tigers to score a lot. The Tigers have to win a bunch of 3-2 games. If the Astros score 4 runs, the Tigers probably can't match them.
So essentially, Brian and I are saying the same thing of everybody being super afraid is being a little silly about it. Yeah, because I did see Brian I saw the Twitter thing of Josh Hader is ass. He's garbage. And I'm like, he's blown 4 saves all season. Now, I know he's got that thing with closers, Andy, that we talk about where for some reason you put him in a game that's not a safe situation and he sucks. But when it's been tight, he's been really, really good this year.
Yeah, I don't know how much. I think the fear is driven, by the emotional hold that we've been talking about all season. The fact that AJ Hinch is coming back to Minute Maid Park, which is, I don't know what special voodoo he has. I doubt he has much. His main special voodoo was being able to talk to his players and getting them pulled in the same direction. He's done that. I don't know that they can pull more in the same direction over a 3-game series. There's just so much motivation you can have. He doesn't have the pitching coaching that he had. So he's got one good pitcher and a bunch of no names who have pitched well. That's not the same as having a good staff. But it's a 3-game series. And as we've seen in 3-game series through the history of baseball, literally anything can happen. The wild card series is the ultimate coin flip. So trepidation is more of lady luck for me deciding that this isn't going to work out for the Astros this year, which honestly we could be kind of due, depending on how you want to look at it. If it's just a talent situation, the Astros should win this series every time. Baseball is rarely just a talent situation in a 3-game series. You've got to pitch around. I think they've got 3 players that are worth paying attention to: Kerry Carpenter, Riley Green, and Buddy Kennedy. Buddy Kennedy bats 200. And I know batting averages would be all in all, but not Buddy Kennedy, Parker Meadows. These aren't all-star players. Although Riley Green has 24 home runs, Kerry Carpenter has 18, and they play in a big park for half of their games. So
okay.
And I tend to remember Riley Green hitting a bunch against us when we played them this year. That may be just anecdotal. But I want to talk about the Hinch piece of this for a minute. I know Brian's got a comment on Riley Green, I'm guessing just by the way his face lit up. So go ahead, Brian.
Well, I just say this here. One thing the Tigers have done a bunch of, particularly with Kerry Carpenter, who is their best hitter, is they will platoon him because he's not very good against lefties. The Astros, 2 of their 3 expected starters this series are Framber Valdez and Yusei Kikuchi, left-handed pitchers. So one, I'll set you up here. One interesting decision AJ Hinch has is whether he puts his best hitter in the starting lineup despite the massive platoon advantage or holds him back to pinch hit late in the game against a right-handed reliever.
So Riley Green potentially isn't starting tomorrow or Thursday, but could be Wednesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just look up and down this lineup, and there's just not a lot that you should be worried about. Having said that, we've played the A's plenty of times where Mark Canha has done some weird crap against us. And again, it's this. If this was a 5-game series or a 7-game series, I don't think many people would have a lot of trepidation about playing this. I mentioned Kevin Brown earlier, though. Tarek Skubal can't pitch twice in 3 games in the series. However, we also saw Sterling Hitchcock come out of nowhere and back up Kevin Brown in a series that we were heavily favored against. I mean, just the history of the playoffs with the Astros, the last 7 years notwithstanding, haven't been great for those of us who are a little bit older.
Well, hold on, Andy. The last 7 years notwithstanding is kind of a big deal here because I mean, I spent 2015 watching like, oh yeah, this is like every other Astros, playoff series I've ever watched in my life. And I went 2017 and every series since then going like, this is not the same Astros team I've watched in the playoffs my entire life. So I kind of feel like I feel those ghosts have been exercised as deep as they were, except for 86 against the Mets. That'll stay with me forever.
To be honest, that's why I didn't want to play the Royals in the wild card series, because there'd be some symmetry with them putting us out of our misery in 2024 like they did in 2015. Again, no numbers support that. The Royals probably get bounced in the first, unless something weird happens. I know their first baseman's coming back. Are there surprises that we should be looking for? Is there anything the Astros need to be doing differently? Can a team do anything differently in the playoffs after setting patterns for 162 games? I'll start with you on that, Brian.
Yeah. So one thing to consider, maybe less so in Framber's start than in the Hunter Brown and Yusei Kikuchi start, is using Ronel Blanco and Spencer Arrighetti for the 3rd time through the order. And there's a penalty to that. You get Carpenter in the game more. You get Carpenter in the game more. But both of them have proven really effective this season. And again, remember in the playoffs, because you have so many off days. I mean, it's 3 games that come together. We have so many off days, and because the games are important, the bullpens become more important. And the need to sort of push your starters to 6 innings every time because you have to do that doesn't exist. Certainly the Tigers won't be doing that in games 2 or 3, whoever they start. And I think they may start Reese Olson in game 2, and I have no idea who their game 3 starter is. I think it'll be a bullpen day if we get to that. But I think those are potential weapons for the Astros that will be used in a different way than we saw them during the regular season.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree. And I think that there is you don't want to have the tendency to change your approach drastically, the approach that's gotten you to the playoffs already, right? Like, so you don't want to see Joe. I feel like if you see Joe Espada come in with a whole different plan, then we should be worried about Joe Espada's ability to manage the team in the playoffs, because I think the only real question the Astros are going to have is whether Jordan's going to play or not, and I think he's going to. So he's taking batting practice today. I really didn't have a doubt, but no, I think I agree with Brian.
Okay, well, no conflict there. I do think there are some other questions for the Astros, and I'll pose these to you. One of which is who is on the bench, who's on this playoff roster for the wild card series, and just to refresh our fans on the rules, putting somebody on the wild card roster doesn't preclude them from being left off the ALDS roster or any other round, depending on whether or not we advance that far. I don't want to get ahead of myself. there's some interesting pieces at the bottom of our lineup. I think, our regular lineup's fixed. I agree that Jordan's coming back. I really wish that Dana Brown and Joe Espada could get on the same page as far as talking about Jordan's injury, because if you listen to one, Jordan's fine, he'll be back. The other one, I don't know if he's going to be able to walk. I haven't seen it, so I don't know. There's something in between those.
They answered in the middle.
Yeah. So if they're trying to do a Willis Reed thing where he just stumbles out of the dugouts on Tuesday and plays through the pain, great. I don't care. Just give me a framework. There's also some questions of the pitching, but I'm going to start with hitting. Is there any shuffling of the roster that you think needs to happen, Jim? I mean, who's your 13th guy from a fielding? Did Zach DeZenzo make enough of a show this weekend to give them something to think about? Does Greg Kessinger continue his miraculous run of not getting a hit for an entire season?
Well, I mean, we can't forget that Greg Kessinger's puts up really good at bats, even if he doesn't get hits. But I kind of think DeCenzo has done enough, mostly because, we saw what Whitcomb did when he had the opportunity, which was commit 3 errors in the span of 2 innings and 4. Okay, so I was in the car. I was walking to the parking lot for part of those. But then DeCenzo showed real power and he's gotten some hits. I could see him being the guy on the, the sort of pinch hitter late in the game, that 13th man on the bench. It seems weird to take a sport that's about big sample sizes and give it to him based on a small sample size, but he seemed like he handled himself pretty well, particularly in that last weekend.
Ryan, anything from you?
Yeah, just I think it's possible they will have Cesar Salazar on so you essentially get an extra, particularly in this round, an extra position player because you don't need 13 pitchers. They may have Salazar on there because I'm anticipating Caratini or Diaz will be playing first base while the other one catches. The 2 guys they need to pinch hit for, I assume that Hayward will be, Hayward being lefty in left field against right-handed hitters, maybe Dubon against the lefties who against Skubal tomorrow, but they'll need to pinch hit for that guy, and they'll need to pinch hit for Jake Myers if they're behind late. So I'd expect to see some pinch hits by John Singleton. Your 13th guy, if he is playing, something's really gone wrong.
But, in a short series, things can go wrong.
I think it can.
This is baseball. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think we've seen Espada settle into, especially not knowing what McCormick's going to bring to the table, because apparently he's going to be activated for the roster. I mean, that's kind of the anticipation that we've been given. Who is in left field? Since McCormick's been out, it's been a pretty steady diet of the Hayward Dubon platoon, I guess, for lack of a better term, with Tucker in right and Myers in center. Do you sacrifice Myers' defense for McCormick, who can also play center, not as well, but serviceably? It'll be interesting to see how Espada plays some of that outfield alignment. The infield's much easier for him to figure out. You plug in the 4 guys and go on.
Yeah, and I think go ahead, Brian.
I would say with Fromber on the mound, you could see Jake out of the lineup because you don't get as many fly balls.
Right.
But I would expect him in the lineup for particularly for Kikuchi to start.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too because I don't think there's any way that Jordan's playing the field this season.
And I think Tucker saying to the media that he's ready to play defense every day was partly him saying, I don't need to DH.
I don't think there's room for him to DH, frankly. I do agree with Brian that Singleton is going to be an option off the bench. It seemed that our offense worked best with both Diaz and Caratini in the lineup. Diaz playing first, I guess, most of the time.
Yeah.
But they can bounce that back and forth. I didn't see a discernible difference when Caratini was playing first versus Diaz. So that part will be
been fun to see Diaz get more comfortable though, because he started to make actually some pretty difficult defensive plays. And you start to wonder because Diaz has obviously hit really well this year, but the power has kind of gone away. And maybe that's because he's catching more. Maybe, we talk about not wanting to move guys around, but maybe Diaz to first base might be an option going forward as a way to help save his legs and save his power. We've seen the Astros do it with another catcher before. So maybe we can do it again.
That brings us to the other side of the baseball.
Oh,
Big question is, I guess for most Astros fans, Justin Verlander. He had a quality start in his last start, possibly in an Astros uniform. I still don't think that buys him a playoff roster spot, but there are plenty of people in our fan base that disagree, and the main reason seems to be respect and leadership and vibes. Can anybody make the case on this show for Verlander getting a roster spot?
So there are two questions here for me. One is, should he get one in the wild card series, excuse me? And the answer to that is no, because he would be at best the fourth starter. And so you can delay that decision. If you end up using both Arrighetti and Blanco in the bullpen to get you through the wild card series, you may have to pull Verlander out to start game one of the ALDS, which is not the ideal scenario, obviously. There's some extra off days in there that may allow you to pitch Fromber in game 2 and game 5, so you don't have to do that. But some of that is a decision you can delay until you see what you need. If you win the ALDS in 2 games and you use, say, Blanco in relief in game 2 to help you get there, hey, that's either Kikuchi or Brown, whichever one doesn't start game 2 would start game 1 of the ALDS on Saturday, and maybe you don't need Verlander in that situation. So it's still kind of context dependent, other than I don't expect Verlander to be on the roster, because there's, he's not going to pitch. He's not going to pitch out of the bullpen.
no.
So, you don't need him now, and you can delay that decision till Friday.
Brian, what about the possibility of almost using him as an opener, though, and saying you empty the tank for the first 3 innings and then figuring out innings 4 through 9 after that?
Do you think he would punch Joe Espada if Espada proposed that to him?
Well, if the choices are this or nothing,
yeah. Yes, and maybe that's what he needs to get out of his system, right? But
it's just that the mindset that I think Justin Verlander understands exactly where he is right now, and I do believe that he wants to help the team win. I don't think that the very fact that he's talking about that he understands if he won't be on the roster is so un-Verlander, or at least our impression of Verlander, that maybe seems like he could have an actual real conversation with them about it.
Yeah, he in his comments after his final start seemed to be giving the Astros permission to keep him out of the lineup. Now, what he feels after having pitched a quality start against mostly major league hitters, I'm sure he feels a lot better about himself for obvious reasons. And I'm sure, one thing Verlander talks about is you have to be totally confident in the pitch you're throwing. We talk about it a lot. So I think he probably has too much confidence, but that's probably, you need that to do his job.
Yeah.
At the very least, he can teach pitchers quotes, because I think he gave a great answer when asked after the start what this meant for the future of the Astros and him. And, he left the door open coming back next year. He left the door open for moving on. And either way, he's good and very happy with the Astros fan base and the club, and that has nothing but good things. It would be great if he could have taught some of that to Garrett Cole after the 2019 World Series, because Agent himself still doesn't sit real well with me. I was misspoke earlier when I said nobody cared about game 161. Clearly, Ryan Gusto cared about game 162 and wanted to play that game. Ryan Gusto's family probably wanted to play that game, so he was the guy that probably missed out the most. And you know what else he missed out on was the Space Cowboys and their weekend. And that reminds me, Jim, you're wearing a shirt that's pretty nice. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so I'm wearing my Space Cowboys mission patch polo. I want to do a big congratulations to our friends at the Sugarland Space Cowboys. I almost said Skeeter, Sugarland Space Cowboys, including Tyler Stam and Amy and Garrett, the play-by-play voice. And I wanted to talk about that for a second, because much like many other things when it comes to being discussed in social media, the discussion of the now national championship for Sugarland has been put into 2 barrels, when really it doesn't apply to those 2 things. There are some people who are saying this championship is 100% a reflection on the depth of the Astros farm system, and it's a proof that's saying yes, it's really great. And then there's another camp that says it doesn't reflect the farm system and therefore is meaningless. The championship means a lot to a lot of people. It's really good for the Astros brand overall. It's obviously very important to all of those guys who, even if they're not necessarily major league players, as we know that some of them aren't, are still some of the best baseball players in the world, and they won a championship against some of the best baseball players in the world. It means everything to the front office of the Sugarland Space Cowboys. It means everything to the game day employees who work long and thankless hours at minor league baseball. It means a lot, and we need to move past the idea that if it doesn't mean everything, it therefore means nothing. And so definitely want to congratulate them. Not all AAA championships are equal. Some of them, like I would think probably the Space Cowboys really are for the most part bubble major leaguers, 4A players, I guess. We've seen the Royal system in 2015. They well, before 2015, that group of players elevated at the same time and won all the way up. So it's obviously a different take, but I think you have to look at just how special it is, how rare it is, because the Astros system doesn't have a lot of minor league championships. And without denigrating what it might mean overall for the Astros farm system, congratulate those players and that staff for pulling this off. It's a pretty big deal. That's what I got.
Well, I mean, I don't think I disagree with any of that. But the opposite of that is, well, you can't prove something based on a result of a playoff series. And that kind of was my point. The Astros do not have the number of prospects that other organizations do, highly rated prospects. The Space Cowboys have 5 guys that counted on their active roster who were born after 2000. Which means
I completely agree with you. Like,
that was the point. It's not vindication for anybody's draft, any development, anything that's happened other than this group of guys played well together. But we had a catcher on that team born in 1991. We have a pitcher on that team born in 1990. I was in high school. I mean, so these are not young guys.
Yeah.
And so you have a bunch of 4A guys who won a championship, and that's great for the brand, for the organization, for those players, for their families, for the town of Sugarland. Sugarland takes a lot of pride in the Space Cowboys. But it has nothing to do with the fact that some of our drafts haven't panned out the way they needed to. And I think the jury's still out on Dana Brown and his drafts. But prior to that, some of those picks just haven't worked out. We haven't picked at the top of a round in a long time. We lost 4 high draft picks due to the sign stealing scandal.
We did?
We did. I'm sorry. We weren't punished. And I think that had been my take, is that it's great that they won. Congratulations to them. It has nothing to do with the health or non-health of our farm system. And I think a lot of fans either don't understand that, and that's fine because you might not have a reason to, or they're willfully ignoring it to prove a point or drive engagement. That's what got under my skin this weekend.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that were like tagging outlets like Baseball Digest saying, see, it's really a good farm system, are idiots. And I think you can, like, you would almost even feel better about it if the Hooks had won the Texas League, for example, because the Astros tend to keep their long-term prospects down at AA. But I just don't want to take away from what these guys have done just because it doesn't mean what most ignorant people on Twitter think it means. Brian?
Yeah. And I'll just make the 3 pitchers on the Space Cowboys who threw the most innings this year were Ryan Gusto, who we mentioned before, AJ Blueball, and Colton Gordon. So for as many of old guys as there are, or sort of quad A guys there are, all 3 of those are potential pitchers who could make starts in the major leagues next year. So it is great that, really old guys and like Wander Suero, who threw 1 inning this year but led the PCL on saves, hope he gets a major league job out of this next year. They help service some guys who, one, achieved a championship for themselves, and they'll always get to be proud of that and enjoy that and have these memories. And That, but also they help service some pitchers who may be a deal for the Astros. Is this, the same as when Hunter Brown came up? No. But these are pitchers who could be valuable to the Astros. And so minor league teams do both of those things, and hope we get some good development, good players out of this. But regardless, congratulations to the Space Cowboys. That's a great accomplishment. They had and it wasn't a fluke that they won in the playoffs. They had, I think they won like 93 games this season. They had an outstanding season. They won more games than the Astros then. So,
Brian, I think the excellent point is the conversation I was having last night. I can discount the position players because the Astros have not done well at developing position players for a while now. Yeah. The pitching staff's a completely different thing because you could have a 28-year-old who can come out of nowhere and contribute meaningfully to the Astros for a season or two.
Yeah.
And the Astros have proven that they can find those guys and develop those guys.
I've talked a ton about Caleb Ort this year, who's a guy who's wandered around as one of these quad A players, and the Astros have figured out how to make him pitch better so he doesn't walk as many guys. And he's going to contribute. He's going to make the playoff roster. Spencer Arrighetti wasn't a highly drafted or highly rated prospect, but they've worked hard and developed him, and he was a very useful major league starter this year and should be in the future.
Yeah, you can ask any Red Sox fans about Ort and how mystified they are about what the Astros have been able to do with him. I think that's probably a good enough place to leave it. We could bitch about the time slots the Astros got, but I don't know what the point. I mean, it is a windmill that Astros fans are going to continue to tilt at. We're not going to draw primetime games unless we're playing the Yankees. That is just a thing. It's unfortunate we got all three of the 1:30 games, but we got them, so we're going to play them. And guess what? If we advance, we're going to get a lot of daytime games against Cleveland too. It's another not media darling.
That series is not an advertiser's dream. Let me just tell you.
I would just, my advice to Astros fans, instead of worrying about what you don't have, is enjoy playoff baseball. It's a lot of fun. We tend to win a lot.
I think that's a great place to leave it.
All right. For Jim, for Brian, for myself, for Go Astros, we'll see you next week. Go Astros.
Go Astros.
Go Astros, and check out Ballpark Nation running to the Minnesota Twins and St. Paul Saints.